Hey everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the Academy Anonymous podcast. As always, I'm your co-host Joseph.
And I'm Jules, and we're glad to have you here. Just a few announcements. First, as always, visit us on our Twitter, which is at Academy Anon, and our website, www.framesandflicker.com. Both of those should be on the cover art for the podcast. We've actually made huge updates for our predictions, especially following the announcement of the shortlists, which is something that we'll talk about in this episode. And also we've made a really cool thing where you'll see our predictions, but you'll also see the precursors that have come out for each of the contenders and those predictions and those charts. It looks really cool, looks really neat. Make sure to check it out. And let's get started on today's episode.
It's also like kind of fascinating to look at because you can sort of see like who the favorite is based on those precursor mentions, but you can also kind of see, you know, the few categories or nominations that were kind of going against the grain. Right. So again, it's really cool. Check out our predictions. We rehauled it to include all the precursor mentions up to date, and we're trying to keep that up to date as much as possible.
Yeah, and I also should say that when you look at the predictions, our predictions are the top 5 of the films that we're or contenders that we think will get nominated, not necessarily the contenders that have the most precursors.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
You know, so the order that you see and the contenders you see in the top 5 are the ones we're predicting. Whether or not they have a lot of precursors, that's besides the point.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and I think we'll name drop this later, but according to precursors, Judi Dench should not have been nominated for Belfast, and Chiwetel Ejiofor should have been.
Right.
And so just because you have a precursor doesn't mean you're guaranteed anything.
Right. And Marianne Jean-Baptiste last year.
Oh my God, yeah.
We were predicting was going to do really well and get nominated for Best Actress for a very, very deserving performance in Mike Lee's Hard Truths, and that didn't happen. So precursors are important to a point, but I also think, and maybe we'll talk about this as the episode goes on, you know, the precursors from critics groups is not necessarily what the industry thinks, you know, and I think that come January, when we start seeing guilds give their mentions, we'll have a better idea of what the industry as a whole thinks. And what the industry as a whole thinks is very different from what critics think.
Yeah, just ask like the brilliant Mike Lee. All you have to do is ask the brilliant Mike Lee if critics, you know, what critics believe matter that much.
Right. And even then you might do very well in the guilds, and you might pop up several times, and you still might get snubbed because it's not a film that is resonating with voters.
Ask Babylon.
So that's always very interesting and very important to keep in mind with this whole like precursor talk. You know, you'll see someone doing really well at their precursors, and then people automatically jump and think, oh, that's it, they're definitely going to get nominated, they're doing so well. Doesn't mean they're a shoo-in. I can think of at least a handful of people, among them Rose Byrne, who is cleaning up the Best Actress precursors, at least some of the very big prestigious critics group precursors. That nomination is not safe.
Not ever.
And
will never be safe.
Right. And we'll know a little bit more if she gets into the SAG, how that does. But that's not a safe nomination. And that's the same story for several contenders.
Yeah. It's also fun to look at. So stop by our website, framesandflicker.com, and check out our updated Oscar predictions. Before we start the show, I think the most appropriate thing to do is to take a minute and acknowledge the tragedy that happened a little bit ago with the loss of Rob Reiner and Michelle Reiner. It's been a heartbreaking year for losses of artists in this industry, and I couldn't think of a more tragic note to end the year on. It's immensely sorrowful, and our well wishes and our thoughts are with all of Rob Reiner's friends, colleagues, family,
loved ones.
We can only speak to the Rob Reiner that we knew through his work, and his work has meant so much to so many individuals, including ourselves. He has made so many amazing films. He's put himself in all his films. He was a brilliant actor. He was a brilliant filmmaker. He got some truly extraordinary performances from Kathy Bates and Jack Nicholson, you know, Meg Ryan, Billy Crystal. He was, I think, someone who really understood human beings, modern human beings, I say modern Americans. And I think he had a lot of sympathy for them. And I think he was a titan of the industry. I think he was an incredible artist. It's such sorrowful news. And, you know, all we can do is sort of find a way forward, because that's really the only option.
Right.
But our condolences to all his loved ones, and anyone who loved him and anyone who loved his work, of which we share in that.
Yeah. Absolutely our sincerest condolences. An iconic filmmaker, iconic films that will live on forever. Such a tragedy, such a tragic, as you said, very well said, such a tragic note to end on. A year that has seen the loss of so many heroes and titans of the film industry, of the film as an art form. It's devastating.
Yeah,
devastating,
and completely emblematic of the kind of year it's been in terms of, loss in individuals who meant so much to this industry, who meant so much to people who love the art form. And then I have to also mention, because we were deeply affected by this too, the recent passing of James Ransone, who was a brilliant actor. Yeah. Brilliant actor. And if you were well-versed and well-exposed to independent American cinema, you immediately know his face. And I was such a big admirer of his. And again, our condolences go out to his loved ones, to his friends. Again, we knew him by his work. Yeah. And it's one of those things where if you have an appreciation for independent cinema, you know who James Ransone is. And I think a lot of mainstream moviegoers will be able to recognize him from his work on It. He was brilliant in Tangerine.
Absolutely brilliant.
And he was a scene stealer in The Black Phone. Yeah. Sinister.
An immensely talented actor.
The Wire.
The Wire. He provided a spark to all the films that he was a part of. He provided this energy, at times, very comedic relief, but also, a lot of deep feeling. And so, his passing was hit us hard. Yeah.
Yeah. And I also think that he brought it again. I think he was an actor who was able to coax a tremendous amount of sympathy from audiences into sometimes, characters that were not easy to love. Yeah. You could see in every performance that he had that he did it with the utmost passion. Yeah. And in every movie that he was in, that he was happy to be there. Yeah. And that he was happy to be participating and happy to be bringing life to something. Right. And so we'll miss him deeply. Yeah. I think, especially because I feel like he had such a young career. Yeah. And because he was one of those actors where, again, if you know him through his work, every time he pops up on the screen, you smile because you know what he's done in other movies. Yeah. And you're just happy to see him on the screen. Yeah. And so that's going to be another immense loss. Yeah. And so our hearts and our thoughts go out to all those individuals, and we share with all the film goers and film lovers.
This community that has taken a lot of losses this year.
Yeah. And, hold your loved ones close and don't take for granted a moment with your loved ones, and then don't take for granted a moment that you get to have with individuals who love this art and individuals who give themselves to this art form and to this pastime.
Yeah, I always say that, to myself, in my heart, when these kind of tragedies happen, how fortunate I feel to have witnessed their talent and their beauty on screen, in the medium, in this art form that we love so much. That always really sticks with me and is something I hold on to when these sort of things happen.
I agree. All right. Well, let's move on to our first topic. So where should we start off today?
Well, let's see. There's two films that we want to talk about that we screened recently. We'll start there. First, we'll start with a film that most people have been screening this December and that we expect more people to be watching, and that's James Cameron's third installment of the Avatar franchise. You and I remember very clearly when the first Avatar came out, and everyone made it a big deal. I think he gave like a special preview of
we were there. We attended
the first
one of those.
10 minutes or something like that.
Yeah.
Like in the summer, it was supposed to be this huge behemoth. It ended up being that when it came out in December. I think it beat Titanic for the most the most watched film.
Yeah, he beat himself. Yeah, and that was like a big headline. And also he ushered in this moment, right, where we thought there's going to be the arrival of this technology that is going to completely change the industry as we know it. And for a sustained amount of time, it seemed like that was a possibility. I think that hasn't, held on over time. I don't think that that's the case anymore, but there was certainly a moment where it's, James Cameron changes the industry with Avatar in 2009.
Yeah, and I remember that race that became the James Cameron versus Catherine Bigelow race.
Yeah.
Former partners turned competitors.
Collaborators as well.
Collaborators, exactly.
Made some amazing movies together.
Yeah, and I think that, wasn't it that year in the Golden Globes when Amy Poehler and Tina Fey made this joke, something about, I think, because they were not in the same category. And the only reason I'm bringing it up is because, A, we're talking about James Cameron and Avatar, but also there was a headline that recently came out that they asked him about it, and he was still really, he felt very icy about that comment still. He didn't appreciate it. But anyway, that's what was going on in 2009.
I think I remember that comment, and it was kind of funny. But I guess it was fun. It's funnier if you're not James Cameron,
right?
I guess.
Right. And then several years pass, and finally Avatar 2 comes out in 2022, and
so many years,
and it underperforms with certainly critics.
Makes a good amount of money though.
But it makes a good amount of money. It still gets nominated for Best Picture, but as we've talked in the past about these sequels that get nominated for Best Pictures consecutively, or one after the other, installment after installment, you should see a depreciation with regard to nominations. So Avatar went from being 9 nominations to having 4 nominations.
With Way of Water.
Just like we've mentioned in the past, Dune went from 10 to 5. That should be something similar with Wicked this year. There's always a depreciation. And so that only ended up getting 4 nominations, but it did get the Best Picture nomination, and people are wondering, is it going to happen this third time?
Fire and Ash.
I think there's some pros and cons to his candidacy, or to Avatar's candidacy this time, and it's that, I really feel like there's 8 solid spots in the Best Picture lineup.
That are spoken for.
Yeah, I feel pretty strongly about those 8 spots. Just to reiterate, that should be One Battle After Another, and Sinners, and Hamnet, and It Was Just an Accident, and Sentimental Value, and Marty Supreme, and Frankenstein, and Train Dreams. That kind of leaves 2 spots where everyone sort of like doesn't know what's going to happen. And Avatar could easily take one of those 2 spots, but it would certainly be getting in that last, 1 or 2 spots. The critics' reception is still not what it was in 2009 for the first Avatar. It's even lower than the second Avatar. And so, it's a little bit dicey. Are they going to, will the Academy want to embrace him for this third film when, again, there should be a depreciation? And, the film is still not doing as well as it, in its glory days with critics.
Well, I mean, going into it, to speak a little bit onto something you just said, which is that Fire and Ash does not perform as well critically as Way of Water, right? And going into it after preview screenings to press and industry, there's certainly some people, some pundits at some major publications who were starting to sort of say it's more of the same. And I feel like I heard that quote a bunch of times, more of the same, which to me always sounded kind of fishy, because if it's more of the same and Way of the Water is more of the same and you gave that a positive review, it's kind of weird to all of a sudden now it's more of the same and now it's a rotten review. It's kind of awkward to me. But undoubtedly there's a little bit of the glow is gone, right? Even if it's not something super pronounced, right? It's, for example, for Metacritic, I believe Way of Water goes from like 65, 67, and I think right now it's holding on to like 61, 62. So it's not major, but I think it is significant. Now, I think 2 things. Number one, and this is something interesting to talk about before we actually talk about our opinion, because we did get a chance to screen it. Number one, it makes a good amount of money again, right? Fire and Ash, number 1 this weekend at the box office, makes, I think, almost like 90 million. But that being said, it does not make what Way of Water made in 2022. Way of Water, I think, crossed 100 million on its opening weekend. Now, the wait was also a lot bigger, right?
Yeah.
The wait for Way of Water was upwards of 10 years, and then the wait wasn't as big between number 2 and number 3, and that may be a factor here. At the same time, I would argue, having seen Way of Water, that there's an argument to be made that Way of Water is disappointing enough where you don't want to see the third one. I was not a fan of it. I know that you didn't like it either, and we'll speak about it when we talk about Fire and Ash. The other thing I'll say though is I do wonder if Academy members are going to look at the Avatar movies differently because he has invested so much of his time in developing them. And so it kind of feels like not necessarily a sequel to make more money, but instead a long gestating passion project. And it almost feels like maybe they'll be able to take it more seriously because he hasn't done anything in between and he's only worked on it for that long. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, diminishing returns and all, one of the major factors that benefits Way of Water is that he spent all that time working on it. That year when Way of Water gets nominated, if you remember correctly, Ryan Coogler was up for Wakanda Forever, right? And you got diminishing returns again. It missed Best Picture in favor of Way of Water, right? And they're both kind of like Disney movies coming from the Disney camp. And Ryan Coogler sort of is... This year, funnily enough, he's in a better position to get in with an original piece of entertainment. But for you never know if what sort of ended up breaking for Way of Water is the fact that a voter went and said, okay, well, I have maybe one more spot left. It'd be good to put in another Hollywood blockbuster, a Hollywood movie that made a bunch of money. It helps theaters, it helps the box office, it helps the industry. If that's the case, and I have to choose between Wakanda Forever and Way of Water, I would rather nominate Way of Water because I've waited 10 plus years to do it, versus Wakanda Forever was just here in 2018 for the first Black Panther movie. And so what I'm saying is that I don't think Avatar is your normal sequel. I think Avatar has this gravitas of coming from this maestro. It's not it's original IP. It's his original idea. It's not based on anything else. It's not based on Wizard of Oz. It's not based on a respected text or a respected novel like Dune is. It's not based on a Marvel superhero. There's this, I think, aura to it that, sure, it's lost some of its glow, but the question is it completely flat now? Is it completely dull?
Right. But I also think that, I mean, to your point, James Cameron is not, for example, John M. Chu. As you were saying, I think he carries this clout for his, the films he's made in the industry, the impact he's made in the industry. And I think that went a long way to having Avatar Way of Water get nominated for Best Picture, as you're insinuating. The question is, can that happen for this third installment? Are they kind of, done with it for right now, ready to give it, not a Best Picture nomination? Also, does the film itself have enough, as you were saying, gravitas to land or to be among the very select group of films that are, sequential, that have several iterations and all of them get nominated for Best Picture, like The Godfather? Is Avatar at that level? I'm not so sure,
right.
But I also think that there's something attached to these Avatar films that I also think you were insinuating. And it's this, they're in a way synonymous with this idea of advancing the technology in the film industry to such a great extent that, I think that carries with it some power and some compelling, persuasive argument for including it in these big awards.
Yeah, no, I agree. And so I guess what's left to talk about is, what was your impression after seeing the film?
Well, I wasn't looking forward to seeing the film personally. I'm not a big Avatar fan. I certainly did not like Avatar Way of Water. I thought there were a lot of flaws with that. I thought it was one of the weakest films I saw that year, which is quite a statement to say. But I will say I was kind of surprised with this new iteration. It's not, I don't consider the Avatar films high art. That's another thing that's, James Cameron has his sort of, quote unquote groupies, that are very, in love with his craft. And again, his place in the market, in the film industry. Guillermo del Toro loves Avatar and has, I think, said in the past that the Avatar films are a masterpiece. And together, separate, they're masterpieces. I couldn't disagree more. But I will say that I was pleasantly surprised in that I thought it was enjoyable enough as a popcorn confection. I had some fun. I had a much more fun time watching this one than the sequel. Maybe I just don't remember Way of Water. I didn't necessarily feel that it was treading the same water. Again, don't take my word for it. I don't remember Way of Water that much. But I enjoyed the villain in this one. Una Chaplin does a
Yes.
fantastic job. She was the highlight of this for sure. I loved seeing what they did with that character, and I think she brought a lot of oomph to the project.
Yeah.
And I was it was pleasant enough to go, and have those 3 hours. It didn't feel like a 4-hour film, like the way of water felt for me personally. Again, I think the weakest part of the Avatar films are always the script, and that's still present here. I don't think James Cameron and his Au revoir is known for having, the best writing.
Right.
That's still very true here. But, I was a little surprised by it, actually.
And I think we have a lot of similar feelings on it, actually. I did not enjoy Way of Water at all, but I kind of felt that, again, there was a lot more involving aspects to this film. So I encourage anyone to go and watch it over the holiday break, and I'm sure most people will. It'll continue to make money. But I will say, if you didn't like Way of Water, there's, as people say, it's more of the same. If you didn't like Way of Water, there's a chance you like this movie a little bit better. It still feels infinitely long. And the movie certainly feels like every time that the movie feels a little bit flat, there's just enough of a little bit of an injection of something interesting to keep you involved. And so I kind of told you, like, this movie does not know the word quit, for better or worse. At the same time, I agree Una Chaplin was a total scene stealer. And they keep doing great stuff. The visual effects are great. The sound is good. I think it was sort of tricky because as I was watching the film, when I was done watching it, I sort of debated, okay, well, the law of diminishing returns. But I don't know where to take the nomination out of, because watching the film, it's as good to earn those same 4 nominations, which is the last nominations for Way of Water were visual effects, sound, production design, and best picture. And by the way, James Cameron did not go to the ceremony. Now, I think you can make an argument after seeing it that it is as strong a contender in visual effects, and it should win that category.
Yeah,
very easily, especially after that shortlist. Sound is still a very strong contender. Production design, I thought, is still a very strong contender.
Mm-hmm.
And best picture, again, it does the things that Way of Water does, unless, again, they're going to say it's less impressive because, less than 10 years passed between part 2 and part 3 as opposed to part 1 and part 2.
Right.
I will say that I think that maybe something that hurt us for Way of Water is that we still had maybe fond memories of Avatar in 2009, which seemed like forever ago. And so it just felt like a completely different direction from what that first one was. Versus here, we kind of had that recent disappointment of what Way of Water was. And I think Fire and Ash sort of had more redeeming qualities about it.
I agree. But I also feel like, you had mentioned this in a previous episode that for that last spot or two, they might consider including a money-making, franchise film, and maybe they'll have to choose between Wicked and Avatar. That seems to be like the places, the two they'd have to choose between. And I always told you, well, there's the third option, and it's not nominate either of them, and nominate a film that they actually like, even if that means snubbing a, franchise that made a lot of money. After seeing this film, I certainly agree with you. I think it's good enough to get the same nominations, but I would go further, and I would say that if we have to compare Avatar to Wicked, I just think that Avatar is clearly the better film. I think it's clearly the stronger of the two. And again, I'm going to reiterate, it's not, a flawless film by any means, but I think that a objective viewer who sees both films, I think, will come away thinking that the better of the two is Avatar.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're going to choose between the two, I think that they would choose Avatar. And let's say they don't choose Avatar, then it's the third option I had brought up several episodes ago, which is that they're not going to nominate either of them. And they're going to go with a film. Maybe it's a foreign film. Maybe it's a lesser, an independent film.
We talked about maybe these outlier spectacle movies, blockbuster movies, F1 and Weapons. Maybe they can get some traction.
Possibly.
I think something that you mentioned was interesting, which is, do they punish Avatar and say, I'm not nominating 3 chapters of the same thing? And they say, maybe I'd rather nominate the second Wicked than the third Avatar, because as you said, I can't think of too many quote unquote third iterations that score a nomination. You have Lord of the Rings, but they're based on individual texts, right? But you mentioned a great one, which was Godfather, right? And so do you do that again? I don't even know if people remember nominating The Godfather Part 3 fondly.
Right.
And so I'd have to really think about how many films accomplished, the nomination on the third chapter. It's interesting to think about, like, can they really snub most of the bigger blockbusters this year and just, sort of say that the only really big blockbuster that I'm going to nominate is Sinners, because it is such a big achievement in terms of, what it meant to critics, what it meant to audiences, what it means to the industry, it being an original blockbuster. Do you really think they're capable of making that decision?
I absolutely do. I think the Academy shows time and time again, if you really look at the nitty gritty of it all, the ugly and the maybe a little less ugly, they tend to do what they want to do. And it doesn't really matter what's appropriate or what isn't. It's what they like or what they don't like. They don't care that they're going to snub this or that if it means that they wanted to snub this or that, and that they felt more strongly about that or this. And so I 100% think, and I think in a way it would be fitting for a year like this, where so many films underperformed at the box office because of the economic situation, the social political landscape of the current day. It would be fitting to have a Best Picture list of contenders that kind of excluded most of those, because, there weren't a lot of success stories.
Right.
You might have had there aren't a lot of, quote unquote sinners or weapons, where you have the best of both worlds, critics and box office. You sometimes had The Wicked, which was good box office, mediocre critics.
Right.
And even Avatar, good box office, mediocre critics.
Right.
So in a way, it's sort of fitting to have a list of 10 that completely excludes the thing that everyone struggled with this year.
Right. And I think on that point, I will say that, as I said, Avatar Fire and Ash makes close to 100 mil for the first weekend. I don't know, keep making money, but that close to 100 mil is a significant drop from the around 140 that Way of Water made. And so there's every reason to believe that, at least here domestically, it will not reach the same highs as Way of Water.
Right. But I also want to add to that, since we're pitting these two films together, a very similar sentiment can be said about Wicked, which had a terrific opening box office. And certainly beat Avatar in that department, did spectacularly. However, the weeks since that, it sort of has been having bigger drops in the box office per week than the first one had, kind of giving us this impression that, the excitement was there, but everyone kind of rushed to see it, in the first few opening weekends. And it's had sort of diminishing returns ever since. And that film will also not reach the highs of the first weekend.
It will not, no.
And I think that part of that is, again, similarly, the socioeconomic landscape of, America today. I think that has a part to play in that as well. However, the same can be said about Wicked, is my point.
Yeah, and I think, to add on to that a little bit, Avatar Fire and Ash globally has already, I believe, outgrossed Wicked. I'm sorry, not globally, but internationally has outgrossed Wicked internationally, which is kind of interesting. And actually, F1 has outgrossed them both internationally. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that if you agree that maybe the playing field is a little bit more even between, poor critical reception, a third chapter, money sort of being uneven. Because then at the end of the day, I think Wicked right now is at 320 domestically, which is really impressive. It's like, I think right outside the top 5 or maybe even in the top 5. But when you see that Sinners, for the budget that it had, made 280 in the U.S. box office, that's 10 times more impressive, even if the number is lower. In context, that number is way more impressive. And so I do wonder if you're right there, and maybe we can just see a year where the only blockbuster they're going to nominate is the only blockbuster, quote unquote, worth nominating. Now, we talked about it after the screening. Is the secret weapon here for Avatar Fire and Ash the fact that this would be a posthumous nomination for producer John Landau, who passed away before this film could be released? Again, that's another sad passing that we had in 2024. John Landau, winner for Titanic, nominated for Avatar, Way of Water as well. And there's a wonderful sort of, it's a really bright, moving moment of a homage in the film when you go check it out. And you'll see that homage to John Landau. Is that maybe gonna help Avatar get a nomination and sort of give John Landau another sort of Oscar nomination, and sort of thank him for everything that he's done for the industry, not just with this movie, but really throughout his career and throughout his collaborations with James Cameron.
That's very possible, yeah.
That's what I thought. I kind of felt in my gut that I would rather hold on to Avatar number 10 because, again, it does more of the same. It does it successfully. It looks like it's going to win visual effects. The money is still good.
And we've talked about it, that typically you see the winners for these categories, they end up being the Best Picture nominees. So if we think that Avatar has such a great opportunity, very likely to win visual effects, the likelihood of it being included in the Best Picture 10 is stronger.
Right.
I think some people might issue the critique that the same can be said for Wicked, but I'm not sure the same can be said for Wicked because I don't think it's a slam dunk to win costume. I don't think it's
consecutively.
Exactly. Or just with the competition, because you have Frankenstein and Sinners there, which I think will be competitive. I don't think it's a slam dunk to win production design either. I don't think it's a slam dunk to win original song. So it's not the same.
I really think its most competitive category is costume design. And I think that something that Avatar has is I have no idea who can even give it a run for its money in visual effects.
Right.
That category is, I think, essentially done.
Right.
So I guess to finish off the discussion on Avatar is, are you still pegging diminishing returns for the film? And if so, what are you thinking? You're thinking 3?
Right now, I'm thinking 3, yes. Right now, I agree with you. I'm a little comfortable hanging on to it at number 10, strictly at number 10. And the easiest thing would be that it does have a depreciation, and instead of 4, it gets 3. And that's Best Picture, maybe visual effects and sound, and then misses production design because they're bored and want to move on to something else, or it gets 3 and it misses Best Picture. And in that case, I wouldn't go to Wicked. I would go to a 10th film that had some passion.
Right.
And that's usually a film that is more critically acclaimed and is about something that resonates or registers with them. Yeah, those are the two options I'm between.
I think both of those are very possible scenarios. I'm not going to dismiss the possibility that it does not go lower and that it matches the same and it gets production design and picture. I don't think that's, out of the realm of possibility. And we'll talk about what was essentially a big sort of bounce back for Wicked when we discussed the shortlists, which was a good day for Wicked. But before that, we're going to discuss another film we had an opportunity to screen, right? Which is The Voice of Hind Rajab.
So that is, The Voice of Hind Rajab is the official submission of Tunisia. As you said, it went to Venice, sort of a docudrama. The director, Kautar Benhania, has been nominated before. I believe in 2023, she had her documentary nominated for Daughters, yes. And if you don't know what the film is about, it's actually based on a true story where the Red Crescent, which is an extension of the Red Cross, they receive the volunteers receive an emergency call, and it's a 6-year-old girl who's trapped in a car under fire in Gaza. This is happening to a Palestinian family that's sort of caught in the crosshairs with the Israeli invasion of the Gaza Strip. And interestingly enough, the film uses the actual recording that was made by this 6-year-old girl named Hind Rajab. And it's probably the most piercing aspect of the film. It really hits you when you hear this young little girl's voice pleading for rescue. It's really soul-shattering to hear, to witness in a way. And so the film is sort of a reconstruction of that event, of that moment of receiving that call and trying to get the rescuers out to her and failing. It's incredibly tragic and obviously timely. I know that when it went to Venice, we've talked about it. There were some rumors that members of the jury were split and wanted a portion of the members wanted to give it the Golden Lion. There were those rumors that maybe Fernando Torres was one of them that wanted to award that film, and Alexander Payne was part of the other portion that didn't.
Wanted to give it to his friend, Jim Jarmusch, who was also an amazing filmmaker, to be fair.
And you and I called that film would win. At least I think I predicted it, and so we were right about that. But this film did end up winning the second prize, which I think is the grand prize.
I believe, at the Silver Lion, I believe. No,
the grand jury prize.
Excuse me, yeah.
Um, and you know, we've talked in the past also how, as of late, there should be at least one Venice title, a film that wins.
That's major. I
yeah.
would say that is a major thing to consider as you discuss the film, which is that not since 2015 have we had no film from the films selected amongst the winners in Venice not end up on the Best Picture list. Usually, at least one of them, for example, 2016, La La Land, I believe, won the prize for Best Actress, Emma Stone, right? And La La Land got into Best Picture. Roma won The Golden Lion and Shape of Water. And so usually since 2016, you will see a film that wins a prize at Venice wind up in the Best Picture list. And because Jim Jarmusch does not have a shot in hell this year, I mean, again, he's an amazing filmmaker, and I'm sure the film is wonderful. Because of that, you do not have very many options, and one of them to consider is certainly Hin Rajab. I mean, there's Hin Rajab, The Smashing Machine, but it would have been 10 years since we have seen no film that won something at Venice show up at Best Picture.
Right, since Jim Jarmusch, as you were saying, won the top prize, and the other films that might have even competed for that slot that you're saying, the Venice slot in Best Picture, would have been The Smashing Machine, which is, you know, somewhere else completely entirely.
As a winner, you mean?
Right. And then there's just The Voice of Hin Rajab, because the other titles that won something were, you know, very foreign titles.
Below the Clouds, La Grazia.
Right. So really those are the only ones to pick from. And this would be, on paper, it sounds like the best option, you know, given that Plan B is attached and you have people like Alfonso Cuarón and Joaquin Phoenix and people like Brad Pitt and Jeremy Kleiner and Dee Dee Gardner from Plan B.
You got a producer from The Zone of Interest on there. You got an Oscar-winning producer from Navalny on there as well. So the team is really good.
And also, I will say that those are all reasons why, if you have been keeping track of our predictions, we actually had it in our Best Picture 10 for a little bit.
We held on to it for a long time. Now, that being said, it obviously is not a favorite, at least among precursors, for example, international film, where it has not been placing very often. It did place, I believe, quite pivotally at the Golden Globes, which is important, right? It ended up qualifying on the shortlist, which is also massive. But we'll talk about the shortlist in a little bit. But, you know, for example, it did miss sound. And some of the brilliance of that film is the way they were able to use the actual recording and sort of have it be at a high enough quality and a high enough standard so that you get enveloped into the story. But so that it's also, you know, it feels credible that you're in that situation, right?
100%. And it did miss that sound shortlist.
Which we had sort of pegged maybe it would show up there.
Yeah, 100%. Right? And there was another foreign film that did really well, which we'll get into. And so, you know, it's a very compelling film. And like I said, the team behind it is, you know, very reputable.
Yeah.
I don't know. How did you feel in terms of, you know, where you can, now that you've seen it, where you see it landing in the Oscar race?
I honestly feel like it is a film that is strong enough to make the 10, and I'm not sure how I like the possibility of breaking that streak of getting a Venice, having a Venice winner not show up on the list at all.
Well, you know, just to be fair, I will say that prior to 2015, it does get a little spotty what we're talking about in terms of Venice winners making into Best Picture.
Yes.
You know, for example, I remember the year of
Birdman, for example. Yeah, the year before.
Which was the talk of Venice that year. Didn't win anything from the jury, which I believe was headed by Alexander Desplat, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe you're right.
It didn't win anything in that ceremony. And no winners.
Appeared anywhere. You're right.
So you know,
it did get
it's not perfect.
It is a bit spotty before 2015, but I think the 10-year streak is pretty significant. Now I'll tell you something else. Do you even have another Venice movie getting into this top 10? Because one thing is no Venice winner, but even in 2015, you know, you had Spotlight, which showed out of competition at Venice, it was the Best Picture winner. And in 2014, Birdman did not win an award at Venice, and it won Best Picture at the Academy. And so the idea that there isn't going to be a film that has a little bit of Venice DNA behind it that is even tougher to believe. So I think
show up somewhere in Best Picture.
Exactly. So certainly I think 10
Well, then when you
years,
open the field a little bit more, you get films like Testament of Van Lee,
which
premiered at
which
Venice.
could not have had a worse day at the shortlist when we discuss it. But I mean, what else is there?
Right.
Where else can we go? And so like
Begonia, a second focus features film.
Begonia is not necessarily in the most enviable position right now.
Right.
But are we really going to say that we're not going to include a winner and we're not even going to include anyone that was in competition or out of competition? That is pretty extreme.
Another thing that I want to bring people's attention to is that the film actually was nominated for Best Film at the European Film Awards. And that's no small thing. And I'll tell you why. Because as we've said, and as many people by now are very well aware of, there's a lot more of an international presence in the Academy. And I think we saw that this year in the shortlists, where a lot of films that did well at the European Film Awards and in certain categories repeated with the shortlist. So SIRAT did really well at the European Film Awards, getting recognized in categories like sound design, and it made sound design.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the two side by side, the European Film Awards and the shortlist, there's some DNA. There's some DNA between them, and so don't overlook that. That is a big get for the film, and it shows that there is foreign passion behind the film. And in a year where we're clamoring for, like we've talked previously in this episode, a 9th or 10th spot between films that we're not that crazy about, should we include them or not? A passion vote is really what's going to matter.
I mean, I 100% agree with you. I think you asked me, where do I see it right now? I think the Venice winner stat is pretty good. I think the Venice participation stat is also pretty massive. I think you brought up a great point with the European Film Awards. It still scored a Best Picture nomination there, despite it not being as obviously as well rewarded even in that group as, for example, SIRAT or Sentimental Value. The other thing I'll mention is the top 8 films that you mentioned, right, which you feel most comfortable with, right?
Mm-hmm.
I believe, you're devoid of some history there, right? Everything is more or less, fictional-ish, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that Hind Rajab also has the benefit of being, based on a true story. And so, a movie it kind of reminds me of, again, is sort of like the late-breaking film from last year, September 5th, right? Which was also excellent and had enough quality to be nominated for editing and for sound. And it just got a screenplay nomination. But again, what I see here is sort of an insufficient campaign. I think the film is certainly strong enough to be nominated. And I think there's too many sort of green flags to sort of say it's an also ran. I think it's sort of a sleeper movie. But I don't know if there's, again, with all those international voters, are they really not going to nominate something from Venice, as you said?
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at with the film right now.
Yeah, basically, I wouldn't sleep on it if I were you. It's certainly a contender. It certainly will be competitive. Will it have enough to muster its way into the number 10th spot? It's unclear. It's not definitive. But it certainly can happen.
Now, I will say that it seems
which would
like
be, an amazing feat for Watermelon Pictures.
Yeah, and for Willa, yeah.
Right. And I will say that Watermelon Pictures did really well at the shortlist because, and we'll get into it, in foreign language film, 3 of their films are in the top 15.
Yep. Now, I was going to say, on its best day, Hind Rajab is a 2-nomination movie.
Right.
Best Picture
and Best
Foreign Film. Because it did not make it into sound like you and I thought it had a shot. Again, the sound.
And it did get nominated at the European Film Awards for sound.
Absolutely, but it did not show up in the Oscar shortlist. That sound, remember, folks, is being sort of led by the Oscar nominated sound designer of All Quiet on the Western Front. But it still did not get shortlisted at the Oscar, despite that European Film Award nomination. But so 2 nominations, which funnily enough are the 2 nominations, or close to the 2 nominations, that the other Plan B movie got last year.
Yeah.
Nickel Boys. Screenplay and picture.
Yeah.
And so like, is there enough fanfare for Plan B and these movies that they support and that they, throw their weight behind to like sort of get that last 10th spot? You know?
And I think that's another thing to consider, because if we're going to take out Avatar and we're not going to put a big franchise money-making film in that last spot, I really like the idea of going for a film, again, that's going to muster those passion votes. But also, I would like there to be a film from a studio that's not already represented in the Best Picture lineup, because this is an odd year where we're getting so many studios repeat noms. And I think that goes to show the kind of year that it's been, where the strongest films came out from a very select group of studios. So we have Netflix getting in with possibly 2 films. We have Neon getting in with possibly 2 films. We have Warner Brothers getting in with 2 films. We have Netflix getting in with 2 films. I don't know if I already said that, but Focus Features is one of the few films that might be getting in, that's, only getting in once, possibly.
And that's if we don't include the Venice stat.
Right.
Yeah, if we include the Venice stat, maybe they get 2 in also.
Right. So I like the idea of that 9th and 10th spot being, films from different studios.
These
that isn't just
outlier.
Netflix and Neon, etc. A24 is another
That's a
one.
very
Marty
good
Supreme.
point. That's a very good point.
And, there is Avatar, which is,
20th Century Studios, AKA Disney, right?
Right. But, Watermelon Pictures would be a different studio making it to a top 10. It would be a groundbreaking moment for them, because to make it all the way to Best Picture.
Right.
So most people haven't even heard of Watermelon Pictures, even though they have terrific films on their lineup year after year.
It would be Watermelon and Willa, and Plan B is there for support, but obviously Plan B is the one that's really well connected.
Right.
But I can see the headline now where 3 foreign films actually do make it in for Best Picture, except the third one is not a Neon movie. It's actually a movie from Watermelon and Willa.
Right.
And it's this movie called Hin Rajab. And then also, Hin Rajab spoils the perfect score that Neon is trying to get in foreign film, right? Which most people are pegging at this point for Neon to go perfect into foreign film.
Most people are pegging SIRAT, No Other Choice, and then the 3 obvious ones, which are The Secret Agent.
The 3 locked ones.
Yeah, Sentimental Valley, and it was just an accident. It is, I think, poised to spoil that lineup. You and I have been feeling very strongly about that. I don't see how this movie doesn't get an eye for foreign language. Well, I think it can happen, but I don't think it's likely.
There are going to be some people like Alexander Payne who don't necessarily see the movie as the most creatively ambitious or artistically ambitious, and there's maybe some merit to that,
or maybe that it's concept first. Before actual, before a dramatization.
Right. But I kind of agree with you. My gut says that it will spoil the perfect score for Neon. On top of the fact that I don't think anyone, within the industry wants to see Neon get a perfect score in foreign film.
Right. So certainly, I like that what you said about that headline of, a third foreign film getting in, but it's neither Neon or Neon already has 2 actually.
Yeah, it's just not from Neon.
It's not from Neon.
The shortlist would make you think that if there's going to be any foreign film that gets in, it's going to be Neon's.
Right. And I think it's a little bit tricky, because there is a third already foreign language film that is well positioned as of now to break into the top 10, and that's The Secret Agent. And so that would be a third foreign film from Neon already. And so possibly if The Secret Agent were to get in and Neon were to get in 3 Best Picture nominees, which is huge.
Yeah.
Then we're talking about 4 foreign films getting into Best Picture. Does it sound like the Academy is there already, where 4 foreign films getting high for Best Picture? We've been inching up slowly. We started with no foreign films getting in, then one getting in, and then just last year I believe there were 2, weren't there? Or certainly in 2023 there were 2.
Right.
And so we've been inching in that direction. Maybe this is the year where we just go and almost half the list is foreign films.
I know certain hotheads are going to have a whole field day with that, but it could happen. I would not be surprised if it did happen.
Right. Okay, now let's move on and talk about the shortlists, which came out this week and were our first impression of what the industry is gravitating towards, what Academy members specifically and importantly are gravitating towards, or what they're not gravitating towards. Some things we're going to go category by category, but some things off the top of my head. SIRAT had an amazing day and showed up in several categories. I want to say that SIRAT is, in a way, to me this year, the sort of curse that keeps on giving, because
really,
this is a film that we had the opportunity to possibly see in Cannes, which we went to earlier this year, and every single person that we talked to told us about how fantastic that film was. It was the talk of Cannes, and we just weren't able to catch a screening for it. And we thought, we'll catch it later. And all these months later, here we are. We still haven't seen it. We're still dying to see it. And now it's the darkest of horses. And so in a way, there's this frustrating thing with this film that looks like is so amazing that we had the opportunity. it escaped our grasp, and it's still escaping our grasp. So SIRAT had an amazing day.
I think we tweeted something like that, which is the winner of the Oscar shortlist was SIRAT because no film was pegged for so little and overperformed as much. And it is super meaningful. And we had actually talked about it because we predicted a lot of these categories, and we'll go through that. But we had talked about SIRAT's, the sound work on it is just too good to ignore. And we've heard this ever since Cannes.
Yeah.
And critics have had their say already, and it's certainly one of the most celebrated sound designs of the year. Everyone says you have to watch it in the theater, and I could not advise listeners more to go watch it in a theater, go watch it in surround. But we had talked about, hey, foreign films and sound, they get in more often than you think. All Quiet on the Western Front, Amelie,
Zone of Interest. And when they get in, most of the time, they are Best Picture movies. Yeah.
You know, let's say the exception here is maybe Amelie. Amelie would have been a top 10 Best Picture movie, no doubt.
100%.
And so we sort of said, you got to be careful with SIRAT
100%.
in Best Picture. And when you look at the other mentions it got, it just, it raises that argument even more. And then we said, like, to ourselves, SIRAT in Best Picture, well, you know who's producing that? The Almodovar brothers.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to watch out for SIRAT.
Yeah, 100%. You have to look out for SIRAT. I think it's one of those contenders really eyeing for those last one or two spots that we're talking about. You know, when we're talking about, like I said, and like I said with the Voice of Hind Rajab, when we're talking about Avatar and Wicked, why not go to a film that clearly is resonating with them? It's several branches. I mean, casting, cinematography, sound design, you know.
It was sort of king at the European Film Awards too.
Yeah. So, you know, why not, you know, put your attention on a film that you feel passionate about that, again, is clearly down the line, really resonating with these members.
I would go further, and I would say that based off this shortlist, I could not feel any more confident. Not that SIRAT's going to be nominated for Best Picture. I don't know about that yet. But that had SIRAT been campaigned by a studio, a distributor, that was dedicating 100% of their resources behind the film, it would likely be a top 7 movie by now. Because it is Neon, and Neon has very clearly treated it no better than 4th, and let's be honest, 5th on their list of priorities, it is not faring better. But after that day at the European Film Awards, after getting all these mentions at the Oscar shortlists, a studio, for example, like Sony Picture Classics
or Mubi
would have taken this movie into a Best Picture nomination, so much so that if it is not nominated, I think it is certainly the fault of Neon possibly being overburdened by too many campaigns.
Right. 100%. I 100% agree with that. It was by far, I think, the biggest success story of the shortlist. I know people want to say that the biggest success was Sinners and Wicked for Good, you know, having so many mentions. And, you know,
and they lead.
Those are, you know, momentum shifts, a momentum shift for Wicked for Good, but really it was expected. I think it got everywhere but it got everything that we expected it to.
These lists are designed for Wicked for Good and for Sinners. They should be doing well here.
Right.
And so I will say that, you know, hats off to the Wicked campaign. They did not lose a mention that they were supposed to get, which is great. And it's a total momentum shift, total bounce back, gives them a little bit of win in their sales. But let's be honest, these lists were created to give the Wicked for Goods and Sinners an advantage and not to cater to the SIRATs.
100%. So those were the two films that lead. I don't know if they both got the equal amount of mentions, but they were both.
I think they're both at 8.
Right. So they're both at the top. But again, it was expected. They got everywhere that we predicted and that most people predicted. And Lee was completely shut out. Oh. And I just want to mention that.
Talking about bad studios.
You know, we got the privilege of seeing the film a few months ago, and I've talked about it profusely on our shows. It's one of my favorite films of the year. But we I remember distinctly that we talked about it. You know, this was a film that I saw and I was sure that would be polarizing and that its best shot was actress, period.
Yeah.
And we went into an argument, you know, into a discussion of how you thought, you know, yeah, it's a good film. I'm seeing possibly picture. And
I saw 6. Yeah. I saw 6, including original score, snubbed from the shortlist, song, snubbed from the shortlist, cinematography, snubbed from the shortlist.
Right.
All I have left is costume and production design.
Right. Right.
know?
So we had that difference of opinion. And again, I loved it. And it's one of my favorites. And I knew that it was going to have a hard time because it's a polarizing film, because it's a film that requires you to get onto that wavelength. I've talked about it before. I fully understood that this is an Amanda Seyfried lone nominee movie from the get-go. And I think that I've been proven right with these shortlists. And the film is underperforming left and right.
You calling it, yeah.
And so really, it's not a shocker to me that it did so poorly here.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and say that to me, and again, you liked the film more than I did. I enjoyed the film a lot, and I recommend everyone check it out, especially on 70 millimeter. I can't wait. I hope they could show that so we can see it.
Glorious.
But I'm a little surprised by the snubs. But all I can attribute that to is poor campaigning from Searchlight, who just does not give an F this year because they're not really supporting any film. I think they're exhausted and gassed from getting Bob Dylan in there last year with A Complete Unknown and getting A Real Pain win with Kieran Culkin. They just don't have the stamina anymore to do it. I think we tweeted about that. But I did not think that it was going to get, completely shut out from all these. I mean, when you have a cinematography list that did not go the full 20, by the way.
Right.
And it could not make it in. And I definitely tweeted about this. Song Sung Blue made it in. And again, no shade to Amy Vincent, who's wonderful and who has had great work. I mean, Eve's Bio. But Song Sung Blue should not be there over Testament of Anne Lee. That's just, I think, the studio's fault.
I have to differ with you there. I don't think it's the studio's fault. I think it's the film. The film is, like as I said, it's going to be a polarizing film, and Searchlight is not the studio to pull it off.
Die My Love got into cinematography. You cannot say that. I don't think that you can get more polarizing than Die My Love.
But the cinematographer.
Well, I mean,
yes.
So you think it's because Seamus
Yes.
is Seamus?
Yes. 100%.
I mean, he's brilliant, and the film is beautiful.
No, yes, 100%.
But I would never have pegged that film was going to get shortlisted for anything.
I think it matters that it's Seamus McGarvey, 100%. I think if Seamus McGarvey has shot The Testament of Anne Lee on 70 millimeter, it would have been shortlisted in cinematography.
All right. That's who you know, maybe.
And also, I think that that's true, and we talked about it after the movie. I think that's true, for all the techs for Anne Lee, the production designer, the costume designer, the makeup and hairstylists. They're not really well known figures in those departments. And I think, unfortunately, for those categories, it matters who you are.
You're seeing it play out.
100%. And so, again, I was just not surprised. I think it's a bummer because it's one of the most beautiful films in all the departments. I mean, sonically, visually, and it's just not being able to break through because it's that, it's sort of an anomaly.
You think they should have released it earlier, maybe?
I think it needed a better studio. I think it needed a different studio. Maybe Movie. Movie kind of has some experience last year with The Substance, kind of, excavating a path that hasn't been done yet and being successful in that. Maybe they could have done something interesting. But this is a film that, again, is going to be so polarizing, and I cannot imagine this film doing well at the box office. Unfortunately, that's sort of the kind of landscape we're in. It deserves to do well at the box office, but it won't. And I think that's what we're seeing play out here. So that was not a surprise to me personally. The casting category was such a letdown. It was such a letdown. It brings to mind the question, why even have a casting category? It's basically the same 10 films, minus a few interesting exceptions like SIRAT, The Secret Agent, which has an amazing ensemble. That would be amazing if it were to get in. It's a pretty boring list.
Well, there were some interesting snubs there, right?
Right.
I mean, I for one was surprised, to say the least, that Jay Kelly did not get in here, right? And I think that is very revealing. I think one thing we cannot deny is that casting is important. The branch is important. And to remind everyone, they are getting a category this year in which to nominate their 5 favorite films or whatever. But the members of this branch have been voting among the Academy for years, right? They just don't have a
their own
specific
category.
They just don't have their own category. But they've been voting for years. And so when you see a casting category that says no to Jake Kelly and yes to Frankenstein, it's very revealing. When you have a casting category that doesn't include Nouvelle Vague, but does include SIRAT and The Secret Agent, it's very revealing. When you have a casting category that will still include Wicked, it's very revealing. And so the one thing I think that you cannot argue is that this will not be an important category, that it could possibly be a prophetic category. That's what I think.
You think that it is a prophetic category?
I think it is, because I'm not saying that The Secret Agent will get in. I'm saying that The Secret Agent mentioned among those 10 is going to be pretty powerful.
Right.
Frankenstein, I do not think is going to get in for this category. I certainly don't think that it should get in for this category. That being said, its inclusion in the 10 certainly make it seem like it is far and away the best push for Netflix.
Right.
The same thing for SIRAT. I mean, I don't think SIRAT's going to make this category, but its inclusion on this list is really meaningful. Weapons got in here.
Yeah.
I think that is really meaningful.
100%.
I think that when we look at the top 10 best pictures of this year, I want to come back to this category and I want to see how much overlap there is.
Yeah, that's really cool. But, as you, to your point, there were a lot of snubs. So even a film like, it was just an accident could have landed here. And I think a lot of people were hoping that it would. It didn't.
We thought it would.
Yeah, I thought it was a definite nominee for casting.
Brilliantly cast.
Yeah.
With a wonderful set of actors. I think maybe something we'll see in the future is that they're not going to respond too much to this whole the director is the casting director thing.
Yeah.
They're going to feel like if you're a director and a casting director, you kind of have your category.
Yeah.
It's called Best Director.
Yeah.
I want to nominate casting directors here.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. So that was kind of a letdown. On that note of what you just said about weapons and missed makeup, that was surprising.
We had discussed it, though, a bunch, which was, the problem with weapons makeup isn't that it isn't well done. It's beautifully done, and they did a great job. The problem is that it's a movie and a makeup job that begs the argument, why isn't the person who looks most suspicious the number one suspect from the beginning of the film?
100%.
You know what I mean? She's over there having an interview with the police, and you're gonna say, never judge a book by, like, it's the film that makes the argument, judge as many books by their cover as possible.
I think that's a very good point. I always had, I like weapons. I'm not as high on it as some other people, but I like it enough. I prefer, Barbarian more, his first film. But that's something that always bothered me about this film. Why do we have to make Amy Madigan's character look like a clown? What's the thinking there?
What's the story?
Yeah, what's the story there besides, what would be really creepy if she looked like a clown?
Yeah.
Like
she's obviously not trying to hide herself very well.
Right, 100%. I just don't feel like there's enough reasoning behind her look.
And I think the film was punished for that. I really do.
I think that's a really good point. And it sucks because take that part of her character out when she's more, without the, makeup, and you're seeing the real, demon, it's really effective.
Yeah.
Those are segments of the film where the makeup really sings.
Yeah.
And then there's the other section, which this is clown.
Again, it's well done. I just think that the branch sort of took it out on them in terms of it didn't really serve the story, right?
So that was surprising. I know that in visual effects, they didn't include two films that we thought had a very good shot of making it in, which were Mickey 17 and Predators. You were a big fan of Predators.
Oh, that is so disappointing to see.
Yeah. You had talked about Sung Sung Blue and cinematography. That was weird. Sound of Falling making it to cinematography. That was really cool.
But
I'm a big fan of that film.
It did do well at the camera image, so we kind of thought. I kind of thought at the end that Sound of Falling maybe wasn't going to qualify because of the Oscar
I thought
dates.
so too. For documentary films, we had some snubs. A big one that got snubbed from documentary and foreign film is actually The Tale of Cillian.
Yeah, which we predicted in documentary, and that's from the filmmaker who made Honeyland from North Macedonia that broke records
in
for Neon in 2019. So yeah,
Orwell was another documentary that people have really liked,
which we kind of thought was not going to make it in because it was maybe a little too broad.
Yeah, Predators, which was one of my favorite films of the year.
Mine as well.
Unfortunately got snubbed here. MTV Films usually does well in these in this documentary category. Not this year. An international film, like we said earlier in the episode, 3 Watermelon Pictures films made it into the top 15. So people who are, possibly chained to this idea that it will be all 5 for the foreign language film nominees will be all neon films. It begs to question, well, if Watermelon Pictures did so well here, don't you think they would at least get one of their nominees in? Especially when one of those films is The Voice of Hind Rajab.
That is an amazing point. It hadn't occurred to me now that between Neon and Watermelon, you have more than half this list. Right? You have 8 of 15 nominees. And so I think that we're building up the argument for Watermelon crashes Neon's little perfect party in the foreign film, and maybe that can even grow into something bigger.
And I think that,
great showing for Watermelon,
And I think Watermelon is a terrific studio of terrific films. And I will say that most people are going to be surprised, possibly, when we say that the short end of the stick in these neon films belongs to No Other Choice. It's not. It was just an accident or sentimental value. Those are done. It's likely not The Secret Agent. And it doesn't look like it's SIRAT.
It does not look like it's SIRAT.
So really, it's No Other Choice, despite, it's one of the best films of the year. It's one of my favorite films of the year. And it's doing well in the precursors.
Did well at the Golden Globes.
It got
Golden Globe Best Picture nominee.
Exactly. Despite all those things, it's 5th. It's 5th
It would
in this
seem
list.
like it.
So if Voice of Hind Rajab is going to spoil the party, that's the spot it takes, I think.
You would think, but there is a lot of critical support for it. Again, just that idea that the distributor Neon is just overburdened by too many campaigns.
Something that was cool, I haven't seen it yet, but I know that a few filmmakers are big fans of, and you are too, is Makeup. The Ugly Stepsister was able to get in.
The single best shortlist mention of the day was the mention for The Ugly Stepsister in Makeup. It could not be more deserved. I'm praying that it makes it into the final 5. It is glorious and disgusting and should totally be in there and should be competitive to win, but it should at least be nominated.
And interestingly enough, Nuremberg, had a couple of mentions. I believe it made the shortlist for score. It certainly made Makeup.
Yep.
And so that's a film that at one point you and I were predicting for Best Picture, because we were seeing that, the audience reaction was strong with this film. And if you see the film, it's something that's very comfortable, that you could see a certain faction of the Academy comfortably voting for.
Very old school, very traditional.
When it underperformed at the Globes, which I thought was its biggest opportunity, we sort of became a lot cooler on it. But, it had some resurgence here a little bit.
Nice to see it being mentioned.
I wonder if in Makeup, where we should see at least one nominee be, a film whose makeup caters around real life figures, I wonder if a film like Nuremberg might have more mileage than a film like The Smashing Machine.
Ah, that's an interesting point.
Which would be shocking for a lot of people, but possibly it's just considering the box office, one did better than the other. Even if one made more money, one still is more in profit than the other.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's something that could be brewing.
That's a good point. I think it's a solid point.
On just looking at the categories directly in casting, we've mentioned it. For international film, we got 4 wrong because we predicted Magellan, Mr. Nobody Against Putin, that would have got documentary and foreign film. A Poet, and My Father's Shadow, which has been doing terrifically with certain precursors.
And what I will say to that is that UK was on a streak between Santosh and The Zone of Interest. People are really responding to My Father's Shadow. Mubi does really well here. It still couldn't get this in. It only got Sound of Falling in. Denmark does really well here, so that's why we thought Mr. Nobody Against Putin. It misses for the first time in a long time. And Janice, which has become sort of a favorite here, got flowing last year to a couple categories. Magellan still misses.
Yeah, and instead they included Late Shift, which, I was pretty, I thought that was a definite possibility. It's a film that's playing well with audiences, and it had an appearance. I think it won the Camera Image Award. The Cinematography Award, very prestigious. All That's Left of You from Watermelon Pictures. Kokuho, which actually made a second appearance on this short list.
One of the few, I think, live action films from J-Kids, so it's great to great to see Japan there with Kokuho.
And Homebound.
Yeah, from India, which notably was executive produced by Martin Scorsese. That's why we had thought it was one of our initial 15 contenders when we put up our our predictions on our website.
Right.
And yeah, great to see Homebound in there as well.
And documentary, as we mentioned, The Tale of Celine, Predators did not get in, as well as Notches, which we predicted, The Librarians, which was something that was pegged to get in, Suburban Fury, and instead we got Coexistence My Ass, Cutting Through Rocks, which I think was always a dark horse contender. It won the a Sundance Award for in World Cinema, in the World Cinema section for documentary. Cutting Through Rocks, Folk Tales, which also went to Sundance. Holding Leah.
What Darren Aronofsky's on that one.
Right. And won a prize at Berlin, I believe. And Mistress the Speller, which I've heard really great things about. So those fours made it in.
Kind of interesting because I think in the documentary category, one thing that you did see was a lot of Sundance.
Yeah.
So definitely, Sundance still a great place to debut a documentary and to get audiences to see your documentary, and a great place to start your campaign.
Yeah. And in cinematography, we got 4 wrong. Unfortunately, 28 years later, didn't make any list, which was a big bummer. Hedda didn't make it, and Lee, we've talked about, and Jay Kelly surprisingly didn't make it. And instead, 5 other films made it. Die My Love made it, which I couldn't be happier about. It's one of the most beautiful films of the year. Song Sung Blue made it, which is a puzzle. Well, I guess considering who the cinematographer is, maybe less of a puzzle.
I mean, I don't think Amy Vincent has gotten her due, but I don't think that Song Sung Blue is her best work.
Right. Sound of Falling, which is really nice to see. Sentimental Value, which I thought was surprising.
Was meaningful. Yeah. I think this is meaningful.
And The Ballad of a Small Player.
Which we should have seen coming.
Yeah,
we should have seen it coming.
Yeah.
And I'm going to call it right now. Ballad of a Small Player could possibly surprise a lot of people and get nominated at the Guild. I'm just going to say that for the cinematographers.
Right. Wow, that'd be big. But yeah, you're right. It's one of those where you're kind of like, why didn't I see that coming?
Yeah.
Makeup, we got 5 wrong. Weapons, Blue Moon, Christie, 28 years later, and Wolfman did not make the cut. And instead, Kokuho, Nuremberg, The Ugly Stepsister, One Battle After Another.
Big.
And Marty Supreme got in. I think the One Battle After Another, people have to watch out for. Even though it has basically one set piece that they're focusing on, basically, when we're talking about makeup, and that's what happens with Sean Penn's character. I do think that Warner Brothers is pushing that nomination, and it could happen.
I think there's a couple of things here. I mean, disappointing not to see some of the films that were left out. I thought Christie would for sure be a contender here, but maybe, again, it just was not popular enough. It was sort of dismissed at the box office. Disappointing that they still have this thing against zombie films. 28 years later, best makeup job of the year, possibly. Wolfman, the legacy film, is gone. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the Alto Knights made it in.
Yeah.
And we had sort of said that was a dark horse all year. No Weapons. I think one of the most meaningful snubs here is the one for Blue Moon, because that means that there is a very real chance that Ethan Hawke is completely by himself here. Right. I mean, we're talking about a category that recognized the makeup of Waltzing with Brando last year. And I'm not knocking the makeup. What I am saying is that you don't have to have a film that has this robust Academy Award nominated makeup team. No, the makeup team of Waltzing with Brando, like Blue Moon, very modest. They just did a very compelling, believable job. And despite all that, Blue Moon did not make it on this list. I do think that is possibly a weak spot for the film.
Interesting. I think that's very true. Original score, we got 5 wrong. Fantastic Four did not make any shortlist, which was a surprise, especially for visual effects. No Other Choice, Rental Family, and The Testament of Van Lee did not get in. All of them didn't get in. And the ones that did get in were Captain America. Diane Warren's documentary got in for score, which was surprising to say the least. Nuremberg got in. Wake Up Dead Men got in.
Did Wake Up Dead Man get in for cast at the end?
I think it did. I'm not 100% positive, but I think it
not
did.
a great day for Wake Up Dead Man, but not the worst.
No, not at all. Original song, actually, we did pretty well. We only got 3 wrong.
By the way, I just want to go ahead and correct us. I just referenced that right now. Wake Up Dead Man did not get into casting.
Okay. All right. So I think it just got score, and that's it.
It was not Shut Out. It was not Ann Lee. So
for original song, we only got 3 wrong. We thought that the other F1 song would get in, the one with Doja Cat. That did not get in. Neither did the Arco song, which is beautiful, or Ann Lee, as we've said. And instead, the Billy Idol song from the documentary got in. The Tron Aries song from 9 Inch Nails got in.
Tron, I think, did pretty well here because, I mean, well, listen, obviously they love Reznor and Ross. watch out for them because they were, egregiously snubbed last year. They are up for song, they are up for score, and Tron got a surprising mention in visual effects.
Yeah.
I mean, and that filmmaker, he's no stranger to getting his film nominated for an Academy Award. He directed Kon-Tiki, which was nominated for foreign film. He directed Maleficent, the second one, which got nominated for makeup. So don't sleep on Tron. I mean, 3 mentions for Tron is more mentions for Tron than for An Lee.
Right. And the last one is from a documentary, I believe, Viva Verdi.
Yeah.
Verdi. Viva Verdi. I think I'm saying that right. And sound design, we actually only got one wrong there, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
We missed The Lost Bus, and instead Mission Impossible got in.
Which, again, I will say, as a fan of Dead Reckoning, Mission Impossible has no business being in this sound category. I think it's revealing that this is its only mention. It missed out in visual effects.
Which it got nominated.
And last year, it finally broke the streak. And when it got nominated for its first set of Academy Awards for visual effects and sound, this time it only makes it into the sound shortlist. So, I mean, one step forward, one step back. The franchise still gets shortlisted somewhere, but they miss out the visual effects shortlist.
Right. And for visual effects, we got 3 wrong. Like I said, Predators of Badland, Mickey 17, and Fantastic Four are out. And instead, we had F1, which we predicted would get snubbed. It did not. And looks pretty good right now for a nomination. The Lost Bus and Tron Ares.
And we sort of talked about this idea that now this visual effects category, not only is Avatar going to win, and you could possibly not even need to nominate anyone else but Avatar, but you have so many films shortlisted that A, were not well received, but B, they're sort of films with supporting visual effects. They're not visual effects first, and I include their F1, which tries to do a lot in camera and obviously is not as visual effects forward as Avatar. And the same thing with The Lost Bus. And so it's going to force us to consider, these really poorly received films. Like, I think we're about to see Jurassic World, the Jurassic
Rebirth
series, whatever, get its first nomination since The Lost World, and that's 1997.
Wow.
So that's how thin this category is.
And just briefly, in the live action short, we got 8 wrong. In the documentary short, we got 6 wrong. And in the animated short, we got 8 wrong. So those are our worst categories.
These are always tough to predict. But
really tough. But I'm happy. We got about half right.
No, I will say
we did actually pretty well in documentary short.
And there's a lot of films that we predicted that we got a chance to see. That's great to see them there. For example, The Singers was a wonderful film, and it's shortlisted. There are also a lot of films that we watched that we really wanted them to show up, and they just did not make it in, which is disappointing. But yeah, these are always tricky, and we're going to work really hard to try to get as close to the final 5 as possible. But again, really tough categories.
These are always the toughest categories, and in a way they kind of make or break both your how many you get right at, come nominations, and also how many you get right come wins.
Yeah, your bottom line here really drops through the floor.
But that's also one reason why I feel so passionate about getting it right.
Right.
All right, and what else is going on? Obviously, we've had an avalanche of precursors. Critics groups come out and give their wins. That, again, will be up on our website and our charts and our per category and our predictions. And as we said when we started off the show, take in the precursors. It can be fun to see who's getting in, who's not getting in, who's ahead, who's not ahead. But don't put too much stock into it because, again, what critics groups think is A, usually consensus anyway, and B, it's not what the industry thinks. And what prevails here, what's king here, is always what the actual industry thinks, because that's actual members who are voting. And oftentimes those members who are voting are not don't have the same, let's say, inclinations that critics have. So keep that in mind. That being said, there are a few precursors that over the years, Joseph and I, are very attentive to, because we feel like they tap into kind of, they think similarly to what some members might think, or rather that their wins and nominees tend to parallel, in a way, the eventual Oscar nominees, in a way that I think is interesting. Statistically, they have, higher statistical overlap. So we saw some of that. The Chicago Film Critics, that's a group that we look at. They usually, when there's been surprises, they've popped up there to some degree. Dallas Fort Worth Film Critics is always one that we like to look at, especially because in their acting categories and directing categories, they number them. So we get to see, you know, who's strong and who's less strong. So that's a good one to look out for. London Film Critics Circle, you know, that also has some good.
They've been prescient sometimes.
Exactly. Southeastern Film Critics, SEFCA, that's another one. And recently we got the Australian Academy give their nominees. They have two kinds of ceremonies. One is for Australian films specifically, and then the other one is for international films. And the international awards is where you'll see a lot of the Oscar contenders pop up. And that's always a really interesting one because, again, like the BAFTA, there's overlap between the Australian Academy and the Oscars.
Yep,
Obviously, if you've seen films, you know that there's several Australian films.
I mean, even in America, like some of our biggest actors are Australian actors.
Right, so they'll be part of both branches. And so it's cool to see those nominees too. You know, that can be somewhat telling. You know, I remember, as you said at the beginning of the show, you know, they were one of the only critics groups to highlight Judi Dench for Belfast in a time and place where nobody was even looking at Judi Dench. And everyone was looking at Katrina Balfe for that movie.
Right.
And she ended up winning that award for the Australian Academy. Lo and behold, she gets nominated for the Oscar. You know, so
without many precursors, by the way.
So don't sleep on, you know, who they mentioned and who they left out.
Yeah.
You know, because I think it can be somewhat telling. You know, the fact that someone like Rose Byrne, even though, again, she is...
There's always a little bit of advantage, right, if you're an Australian actor.
Exactly. So Joe Edgerton makes several appearances here. So, you know, so possibly Rose Byrne getting in here might not be as, you know... prescient, possibly, but still, it is a film like If I Had Legs That Kick You.
It would be worse if she had not gotten in.
Yes, that would be very telling.
Yes.
So I think that's a good get for Rose Byrne. Someone like Chase Infinity manages to get in here. I think that's big.
That's pretty meaningful.
No supporting actress got in for One Battle After Another.
Oh, that's an eyebrow raiser.
And if you look, you know, someone like Elle Fanning managed to get in, but someone like Inga Ipstatir Lilias did not. And we've been on this train that, you know, possibly if there is a tour for a film, it's One Battle and not Sentimental Value. Here we are, Elle gets in and Inga doesn't. We think something similarly will happen at the SAG. You know, so it's really interesting to see, you know, people who are included, people who are excluded.
Yeah, I think that I would put the Australian Academy like right there with the European Film Awards. Like you're going to get industry overlap there between BAFTAs, Australian Academy, European Film Awards. So you have to be paying attention to all of those.
Nuremberg got an eye for Best Actor and Best Picture, people.
Yeah.
So, you know, again, I'm not saying that Nuremberg is definitely going to get nominated, but what I am saying is that there's a pocket of people who will be voting for the Academy Awards who like that movie.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So that was just a quick note on that. I think next we're going to move into having a preview of who we think is going to win the Critics' Choice Awards, which are, I believe, on January 4th.
Right.
And so let's start with Best Picture. Well, you know, just before that, I'll just say a quick note. You know, I think the Critics' Choice Awards this year are happening before the Golden Globes.
Which is really exciting for them, I think. I've heard a lot of people feel like, we're going before the Golden Globes. So
it's happened already, but it's happened already, I believe. It's not the first time this happens. And if I might be mistaken, but I don't think so. And I guess I just want to reiterate something that we said. We give the Critics' Choice a lot of flack for their kind of, you know, Gold Derby, predict the Oscars mindset. And they really get their opportunity to kind of, you know, be in a way free from all those things when they go first, because they're not influenced by what who the Globes gave it to or who the SAGs gave it to. You know, I'll never forget instances where all of a sudden, you know, someone like Jessica Chastain wins the Critics' Choice Award right after winning the SAG Award for Best Actress, and it was clear that she was probably going to be the winner that year, instead of giving it to probably the contender that they wanted to give it to, or they might have been more passionate about that year, which probably was Kristen Stewart for Spencer.
Remember when they tied? I think weren't they the first ones to tie Sandra Bullock with Meryl Streep?
Yeah.
What the?
Yeah.
I mean, again, one of the most critically acclaimed films, and then one of the most middle of the road films for critics that year. So.
Right. And as we've said, you know, that mindset I think really bites them in the butt.
They gave the win to John M. Chu last year.
Yeah, who didn't even show up this year as a nominee.
What kind of call was that?
You know, it's just plain. Sometimes it's just plain ridiculousness. Sometimes plain, you know, buffoonery. Sometimes, But either way, it's a televised event, so we'll we'll say who we predict will win. But I think a lot of these are going to be pretty obvious.
I think they may try to make their name.
I think we'll see. I think there's some moments where they might deviate a little bit, and that's when they're quote unquote at their best.
Yeah.
So in 2023, it was cool to see that they gave it to Emma Stone and Paul Giamatti for Best Actress and Best Actor, because that felt like who they liked the most.
They didn't give it to Cillian Murphy?
No, they didn't. Actually, one of the few precursors, televised precursors that did not. And I think that's interesting, because at least that shows me that I guess Paul Giamatti had that passion to land him a win. But that's something that we see, very little with this organization. We'll see what happens this year when they go before the Golden Globes. That being said, I do expect them to follow consensus, and the consensus right now would be that Best Picture would obviously be one battle after another. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Were you going to say something?
No.
For Best Director, I think it's clearly Paul Thomas Anderson for one battle after another. Again, I think the only possible film that they would consider is Sinners and Ryan Coogler, but I don't think that's going to pan out. It's one battle and one battle. For actors, if they were being honest, they would probably give it to, in my opinion, if they were being honest, they would probably give it to Rose Byrne, because she's been doing so well in these major precursors. She doesn't have the most precursors, but she has the biggest ones. But they're going to go with who they believe is going to win the Oscar, and I 100% believe that she will, and that's Jessie Buckley for Hamnet.
I agree.
For Best Actor, again, I really feel that they're going to go with who's going to win the Oscar here, and that is, they firmly believe, will be Timothée Chalamet. We'll see if they throw in a wrench here and they give it to possibly someone they rather give it to, like, for example, Leo DiCaprio. There's been some mumblings that he might get his second Oscar here, especially if the whole Timothée Chalamet campaign thing doesn't work, and we haven't talked about that yet.
Actually, I think that after last year's win at the Oscars for Mikey Madison, I think most of the Critics' Choice voters are going to be on this whole idea that one of the acting winners
she didn't
has to
win
go.
the Critics' Choice Award.
No, but she won the Oscar.
And
so I think that's going to convince them that, well, at least one of my acting winners has to be the Best Picture winner or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's going to end up breaking for Leo. I think Leo will end up winning the Critics' Choice.
We'll see. I think this is an opportunity for them. I don't think they'll take it, and I think they'll go with the front runner, which is Timothée Chalamet. If we're being honest, I think that Timothy, well, I guess, I don't know. I was going to say that maybe Timothy's only loss might be the SAG, because he just won last year.
Mm-hmm.
So I fully expect him to lose the SAG this year, but we'll see. So I'm saying Timothy, you're saying Leo.
Yeah.
For supporting actors, I think this one's really easy. I know there are going to be people who are going to say Ariana Grande because they're big fans of the film and of Ariana Grande. Some people are going to be very high on Teyana Taylor. I think this is an easy win for Amy Madigan. I would be surprised if she didn't win, just because I think that it's become clear with the precursors that she's the critics' favorite. And second is someone like Teyana Taylor. So I'm thinking that this is a win for Amy Madigan.
I think it is a win for Amy Madigan, but be careful, because we've recently reassessed, and maybe we'll discuss this in further detail down the road. But Wunmi Mosaku is right there. She's right where she needs to be to pull off an upset.
We're going to talk about this hopefully in later episodes, but you and I, revisited Sinners recently, having seen Sinners again with the recent re-release. I think people might be sleeping on Wunmi Mosaku as a possible eventual winner of this category, because if Weapons doesn't make it into Best Picture and Amy Madigan ends up being the only nominee for Weapons, I think that's something that hurts her chances to win this category. Also, we don't know yet how they're going to react with the kind of film it is. It's not the kind of film that even doesn't win Oscars and doesn't even get nominated for Oscars.
Right.
So if she manages the nomination, can she really win? Especially if she's by herself, Teyana Taylor would make sense, especially if what we believe to be true happens, which is that One Battle breaks records and gets possibly all 6 actors nominated. It would make sense for there to be a win here in this category for Teyana Taylor. However, I think her character is some voters might have an issue with and feel that it's a little bit too prickly for them.
Mm-hmm.
You have someone perfect in Wunmi Mosaku, who is in a Best Picture favorite and a top 2, top 3 best picture film. Gives your winner some diversity. She's terrific in the film. And it could be a win for Sinners in the acting department. And I expect, for example, Sinners to win the SAG Ensemble, for example. So it would make sense.
And also, I mean, between all the Warner Brothers performances, one could argue that it's possibly the most redeeming character.
I think that's very true. I think that's very true. I think it's a very good point, actually. An excellent point.
I think she's going to have some good UK support.
Right.
So definitely watch out for Woonbi. Can I see her spoiling the night here and taking it from Amy Madigan?
Interesting.
It could happen.
Interesting. I think supporting actors will be the most exciting acting category to see, at least in the beginning, televised precursors.
Yeah.
Because we're not quite sure what's going to happen there. I mean, I will be honest. I'd say I think that Amy Madigan will win this, but would I be shocked if Teyana Taylor wins? Would I be shocked if Ariana Grande wins? Will I be shocked if Inga Ipsdotter Lilias wins? Not really. I wouldn't be. So it would be interesting to see what happens here in this category, right?
All right.
I mean, can't you see any of those winning?
Oh, yeah. I mean, maybe,
I feel good about Amy Madigan, but I could see any of those winning.
Maybe without Inga, I do think that the double nomination there for the sentimental actors could be a factor, maybe. But any of them could win. Yeah.
For supporting actor, this one I think is a little bit tougher because if they were being honest, they would probably want to give it to Benicio del Toro, who's been doing well the precursors, at least I think, but they're going to go with who they think is going to win the Oscar. And I wholeheartedly think that that's Stellan Skarsgård for Sentimental Valley. So I say he wins. If they were being themselves, they would either give it to Benicio or they'd give it to the passion pick, which would be Jacob Elordi for Frankenstein.
I have always tweeted after we saw the movie, Benicio del Toro is the performance to win here in supporting actor between the 2-1 battle actors. In fact, I would argue that as time goes on and Sean is winless, Sean is in more danger.
He's won some critics groups, but you mean televised precursors?
He's just very clearly second to Benicio. I think we've always been of the thought that Stellan Skarsgård is the winner here. And I think there's still a lot to suggest that's the case. I think the person to watch out here is Jacob. I think Jacob will end up being the surprise here.
If they were themselves, it would be Jacob.
I feel like the win is going to go to Jacob. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to close it out and get a nomination at the end, but I do think that he will get a win here.
So you're saying that?
I think Jacob.
Okay, so I'm saying they go with who they think is going to win the Oscar, and that's clearly Stellan. For original screenplay, I think this one's a little bit more interesting. The precursors have certainly broken for Sinners, I believe, with the most wins in the original screenplay category. At the Oscars, I don't think that'll be the case. That being said, I think they're going to go with Sinners for best original screenplay.
I agree with you. I think it's going to be one of the few places to get Ryan Coogler on stage, and I think they're not going to pass that up.
100%. For adapted screenplay, I think this is an easy one. I think it is one battle after another. Close second is probably Hamnet, but I think it's a distant second. You agree?
Yeah, I agree.
Ensemble, I think this one is certainly between Sinners and One Battle, and I give the edge to Sinners.
I agree.
Young actor, young actress. I think this is a battle between Miles Canton for Sinners and Jacoby Jupe for Hamnet. I personally would pick Jacoby, even though I love Miles and Sinners. But I think that this is going to be another wins for Sinners.
I prefer Miles, and I think that Miles is going to win.
Okay. For comedy film, which is not a bad category in terms of their nominees, but it's a ridiculous category.
Which is, I was going to say when we talked about it, like this is probably one of their most genuine categories of the ceremony.
Yeah. I feel like we're so snarky when we're talking about the Critics' Choice. This is kind of like a little snark section of the show. But anyway, for best comedy, again, it's a good group of nominees. I'd say that the win is between The Naked Gun and Splitsville. I think a lot of people on Gold Derby at least are predicting it's going to be The Naked Gun, but I don't know. I think I'm going to go on a limb and say that it's Splitsville.
I am actually going to go ahead and say the controversial thing. I don't think The Naked Gun should win, number one.
Neither do I.
It's not a bad movie. It's just nowhere near as funny as the originals, and it's nowhere near as good as it should be.
I think it's just okay.
It's, it's not even the best spoof we saw this year. I'm actually going to go ahead and say that the winner is going to go to Friendship.
You think so?
Friendship is going to win here.
I could see that, especially since he's having a moment.
He is having a moment, and I don't know if he's going to be there, but I think they want to give it to him.
He's hilarious. I love him. Animated feature, I think that's an obvious one. It'll be K-pop Demon Hunters. Foreign film, I think that
they weirdly enough, it was just an accident.
Weirdly enough, I think the favorite here is clearly it was just an accident, and I think it will win. But it just goes to show
but nobody saw it.
It just goes to show the phoniness of this, because this is a film that couldn't even muster a Best Picture or Best Director nomination, despite it being a favorite. And it's going to win this category simply because it's the favorite to win this category.
And again, I will say that why the hell isn't sentimental value in this category?
What the hell is going on?
How does that make any sense at all?
What the hell is going on here?
Yeah, I guess the win has to be, it was just an accident because they disqualified sentimental value.
Yeah.
Watch out for No Other Choice, though. I guess it's not impossible.
Possibly, like I said, somehow it makes sense for them to snub. It was just an accident for picture director, but definitely give it the win for foreign film. Cinematography, I think that's an easy one. That's Sinners.
Yeah.
I think that's also the Oscar winner. Costume design, I think that might be a little interesting. I think Wicked has a chance of winning this category, as does Sinners. But I'm going to say that Frankenstein is the winner here.
I like that call.
Right. For best editing, I'm going to say that that One Battle After Another wins this award. The sheer magnitude of having this, this tremendous scope and having it feel like, whiz by you is something that I think is going to attract them. I think it's a dark horse contender for the Oscar as well. So I'm going to go with One Battle for editing.
Agreed.
For hair and makeup, I'm going to say that that's a very easy one as well for the Oscars. That's Frankenstein. Distant second would be something like Weapons, I think, would have some fans, but Frankenstein is it. For best score, I think that's another easy one for Sinners.
Yeah.
Sinners should walk out possibly having the most wins, even if
without a Best Picture win, yeah.
Yeah, even if One Battle ends up winning picture director and screenplay. For best song, I think that's going to be K-pop Demon Hunters, even though I think, over the last few days, I've come around to this possibility that K-pop loses the best original song category to Sinners for the song that Miles Canton sings, I Lied to You. But at least here, I think K-pop is safe to win.
I don't know. I think I got to disagree. I think Sinners should win here.
Interesting.
I think so. And I think something that helps is that, at least in this category, none of the songs doubled up. So I think they have a better shot. And so I think if everyone sort of says Sinners had the best soundtrack of the year, then it should win here.
For production design, I'm going to go ahead and say again that Frankenstein pulls a win.
Makes sense. Watch out for Sinners, but makes sense. Yeah.
For sound design, this might be interesting. If they were cool, they might give it to something like SIRAT. They won't, though. So I'm going to say they're going to go with the most obvious pick, and that's F1.
Listen, I cannot wait to talk about this film further, but I think SIRAT is the Cinderella story of the year, and I'm here for it.
Me too.
That being said, I think it's going to go to F1 because they think it's going to be nominated for an Oscar. And it may very well be, but watch out for SIRAT because that'll be one hell of a win.
For stunt design, which I think the Academy is close to, I believe, having a stunt category.
I think next year.
So they're getting ahead of it. I think, isn't this the first year they have a stunt design category or no?
At the
Possibly
Critics' Choice?
Yeah, possibly not.
I'm not sure.
Don't quote me. But I'm actually going to say the Mission Impossible. I think that's the favorite. I think that'll be the prevailing winner.
I think they're hoping for a ticket for Tom Cruise is what they're hoping for. But yeah, I agree.
And then finally, for best visual effects, gee, I really wonder who's going to win this category.
Nobody saw it. It was only good enough to get one nomination based on its trailers.
Right.
But it'll win. It'll win that category based on its trailers again.
Right. And that's Avatar, Fire and Ash.
Yeah.
And finally, for the last portion of the show, we're going to preview who we think are going to win, which films we think are going to win the National Society of Film Critics Association. That, I believe, will be the 3rd of January, and it'll be right before, I believe, the Critics' Choice Awards, which are on the 4th. It's always really cool. It's always nice to see who the top 3 critics groups, which are LA, New York, and National Society of Film Critics, who they give it to.
Yeah.
But there is overlap. So the National Society of Film Critics is made up of members who are both part of the LA Film Critics and the New York Film Critics Circle. So you'll oftentimes see a lot of the same names pop up here.
Yeah, they're pulling from the same number of contenders,
right,
kind of thing.
Exactly. So there's just a lot of members in this group that showed up in LA and New York.
Although I will say it's always kind of fun because, like, I remember in 2022 when Jafar Panahi's film No Bears was listed here for a bunch of awards. It was not listed at either LA or New York. And so sometimes they do something cool like that.
Yeah, I think sometimes if they see, I do think these are critics who see kind of who's getting a lot of love and who isn't. And if there's a contender that they want to push and, put a little bit of the spotlight on, they'll try to do that.
100%, they can absolutely be reactionary. There was one great year where they gave the big wins to Inside Llewyn Davis as one last-ditch effort to give it a little bit of momentum because, like, so many of the bigger sort of critic awards, like, left it off. So, yeah, they absolutely could be reactionary.
Right. And I expect this to be a year where a strong group of like 5 or 6 films kind of take the majority.
Dominate.
And among them are several foreign films like SIRAT, and It Was Just an Accident, and The Secret Agent, and No Other Choice, One Battle. So, 5 or 6 of these films I think will get the majority of the mentions. So let's start with Best Picture. I think it'll be a sweep, and One Battle After Another will win all 3. It'll win Best Picture here as well. The number 2 that we're predicting is Jafar Panahi does really well here, so we're predicting It Was Just an Accident. Watch out that possibly they want to go their own way because they see that One Battle is doing so well, it doesn't need the help, and they give the Best Picture win to It Was Just an Accident. That could definitely happen.
Possibly, yeah.
And our number 3 pick is The Secret Agent. So these, if you're not familiar with these have a number 1, a number 2, and a number 3, and they're based on rounds of votings.
Yeah.
So whoever accumulates the most points is number 1, second most, number 2, third most, number 3.
Yeah.
Okay, for Best Director, we have PTA winning for One Battle at number 1. Our number 2 is Jafar Panahi for It Was Just an Accident. Again, they could switch for Best Picture. And our number 3, we actually going to say it's Oliver Lax for SIRAT.
Yeah.
Because, again, we do expect SIRAT to do well here. For Best Actress, right now we're thinking that Rose Byrne is going to sweep and get all 3.
She should. She needs to.
If I Had Legs I'd Kick You. However, again, don't take that as a for sure thing because just last year, Marion Jean-Baptiste did that and still wasn't able to get in.
Poor Rose Byrne's campaign, like no days off. Talk about like a no days off campaign.
I wouldn't be shocked if our number 2 pick, which is Jessie Buckley for Hamnet, has enough passion to get that number 1 spot. Regardless of how some critics might feel about the movie, there are several critics that do quite like it and love this film, and this would be one of the few places to spotlight it. So don't be surprised if she ends up winning this. But right now we're going to say Rose number 1, Jessie Buckley number 2, and a number 3, interestingly enough, I think is going to be a tie between Renata Reinsve for Sentimental Value and Ava Victor for Sorry Baby.
I really feel like Ava Victor has a really good shot here.
Right, so do I. I feel good about Ava Victor. I'm a little bit less sure about Renata because she placed for Worst Person in the World at number 2 in 2021. Maybe they feel like they don't need to place her again. We'll see. For Best Actor, I believe that it will be the winner for the New York Film Critics Circle, Wagner Moura, who prevails here for The Secret Agent. The number 2 choice, I think, will be Lee Byung-eun for No Other Choice, who's amazing in his film, and it'll be one of the ways that they can spotlight that movie. And the number 3, I think, will be Ethan Hawke for Blue Moon, who he won this award, I believe, in 2018 for First Reformed.
You know what? I'm not going to lie. Like, we're keeping him off, and, it's a choice to keep Chalamet off for Marty Supreme. But what if this awards body is reactionary and gives a bunch of awards to Marty Supreme?
Could be. It could happen.
Recency bias can happen as well.
It could happen. I would watch out for more. Someone else I'd watch out for is someone like Leo DiCaprio for One Battle. They might feel like they want to spotlight that performance because that film is going to do so well, and he hasn't won any of the big ones yet.
Oh, that's a good point.
Might be his last chance. We'll see. For supporting actors, it's kind of interesting. We're going to predict, and as we mentioned earlier in the show, this will be one of the first kind of reveals as to possibly our prediction is possibly one of the first reveals of Wunmi Mosaku's strength, and that she will win the Supporting Actress Award here for Sinners. So we're predicting her at number 1, Teyana Taylor at number 2, and Amy Madigan at number 3. Technically, it would make sense for this award to go to either Teyana or Amy. They've kind of split most of the awards, but we think it's going to be Wunmi Mosaku. And like I said, watch out for her to be the eventual winner possibly for the Oscar.
I mean, speaking of Leo, I will say Regina Hall did not win this award for Support the Girls.
She didn't, but she placed.
She did place, but she has not won yet.
Right.
So just keep an eye on that.
Right. Supporting actor, we think Benicio will win. We believe that Stellan Skarsgård will be number 2. Interestingly enough, Benicio is the New York winner. Stellan is the LA winner. And the number 3 spot, we're going to go with Jacob Elordi for Frankenstein. Mm-hmm. Watch out for possibly Alexander Skarsgård for Pillion, Delroy Lindo for Sinners, possibly, even though I think he won, I believe, for The Five Bloods.
Andrew Scott.
Andrew Scott for Blue Moon, who, I think is great in that movie, but he won recently in this critics group as well, for
All of Us Strangers.
All of Us Strangers, yes. One of the best performances that year. For best screenplay, we're predicting that this will be at least one win has to go to Jafar Panahi.
It should.
Yeah, and we think that it was just an accident, the winner for screenplay. The number 2, we're predicting PTA for One Battle. And number 3, we're predicting Ava Victor again for Sorry Baby.
Yeah.
Other people to watch out for, No Other Choice might pop up here. Train Dreams might pop up here.
Secret Agent's not bad.
Secret Agent might pop up here. Blue Moon might pop up here, actually. I wouldn't be shocked at that. For cinematography, we're going with our predicted winner, Sinners. Our number 2 spot, Train Dreams. And our number 3 spot, SIRAT.
I could see Train Dreams and Sinners swapping the win here, but I'll say also like Secret Agent maybe placing here.
Maybe. I would love that. I would love that. For documentary, we believe it will follow suit as New York and LA and be My Undesirable Friends Part 1, Last Hour in Moscow. Number 2, we think will be The Perfect Neighbor, which has been doing well at the precursors. And the number 3, right? And the number 3 will be Put Your Soul in Your Hand and Walk. Yeah, which also got an eye for the Gotham.
I think so.
And for foreign language film, the final award, we believe it will go to It Was Just an Accident for Jafar Panahi. The number 2 spot, The Secret Agent, and the number 3 spot, SIRAT.
I think the thing to sort of watch out for here, and sort of like the asterisk in what we're saying, is It Was Just an Accident can't win both. It can't win picture and foreign film. Right. And so right now we're saying it'll win foreign film and PTA will score best picture.
Right.
If they do decide to give best picture to It Was Just an Accident, look for them to give it to another title, foreign film. And there's where Secret Agent, or man, if SIRAT has a day here, that's totally gonna shake the race.
Yeah. Well, I would love that. And they also have like an experimental award, maybe the documentary, Afternoons of Solitude. I thought about maybe Black News Terms and Conditions, something like that. And anyway, so it'll be cool to see what happens there on the 3rd. And I think that's mostly it for this episode.
Oh, that's great. I mean, well, I do want to say that this will probably be our last episode of the year. So we'll resume the Academy Anonymous podcast 2026, and we'll have a bunch of results to go over and a bunch of award ceremonies in the offing. And I think Oscar nominations are, end of January, right? Early February. We'll confirm that. In the meantime, definitely check out our predictions on our website, framesandflicker.com. Keep up with us on Twitter at Academy Anon. We'll try to tweet through the ceremonies. And I think that covers everything for this episode.
For just really quick, our predictions will be, since all these precursors are coming out, you should see us updating it, daily with new precursors that come out and whatnot. So
new winners,
look out for that.
All right. Well, we want to wish everyone a happy holiday and a very safe new year and a very happy new year with your loved ones. Thank you for listening. And
thank you for spending a portion of your 2025 with us.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. And we'll see you guys back here next year.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. Stick with us. And it's been a pleasure.
If you've been enjoying the Academy Anonymous podcast and want to support the work we're doing, there's a voluntary support link in the show notes. Totally optional. Just a way to help us keep the podcast going. Thank you for listening.
The music on this episode, entitled Cool Cats, was graciously provided by Kevin MacLeod and Incompetech.com. licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0. https://creativecommons.org/licenses/by/3.0.
Disclaimer. The Academy Anonymous podcast is in no way affiliated or endorsed by the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences.